Happy New Year, everybody. I'm Tyler, and there is no perfect movie. But instead of wasting time talking about how this was the worst year for the decade to end on, I'm here with my buddy Josh to talk about our top 10 favorite movies of the 2010s, which was a really hard list for me to narrow down, just because the 2010s were really the decade that I fell in love with cinema. Sure, I used to watch Disney musicals on VHS all the time 24/7 growing up, but when I got to high school and I started to gain a lot more friends who were also just as, if not more so, into movie making than I was, I learned so much about indie cinema, foreign films, what each country was known for in terms of its genres in regards to the filmmakers who do such a great job. There were so many forms of animation beyond Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks that I learned and grown to appreciate just as much as, if not even more so. So, altogether, this has been a pretty good decade for me in regards to cinema and for the world in general, because not only did we get Avengers Endgame, the largest movie ever, and proof that cinemas will not go away, despite what idiots on the internet will say, but we've gotten so many new filmmakers to worship. We got to appreciate people like Christopher Nolan or Bong Joon-ho, among many other talented individuals, some of which we may highlight in this list today.
Thank you, Tyler, for that lovely introduction. And once again, welcome to the Josh and Tyler Show. Today we're counting down, as you said, Tyler, our top 10 movies between 2020 or 2010 and 2020. I said 2020 twice. If we just did 2020, I think we've already done our best of list. Link is in the description. But before we start, I just want to drop some honorable mentions because, as you have previously stated, there are so many to choose from. 10 years worth of movies is quite a lot. And there's just a few that didn't make the top 10 that I absolutely love. Let's just run down those. Fury, Brad Pitt war movie with Shia LaBeouf, absolutely heartbreaking, incredible. I think it's honestly the best war movie I've seen in such a long time. It's probably my third favorite war movie of all time. It just didn't crack the top 10, but it is phenomenal. It is dark and it is heartbreaking, and I absolutely love it. Apostles, Netflix Apostles with Dan Stevens is a dark thriller trying to find his wife on this cultish island. It's horror, it's thriller. This is a 2018 film, I believe, off the top of my hand. It's a few years now, but I absolutely love this movie, and it's the only direct-to-streaming that made it right onto my list. If you have not seen Apostle, I highly encourage you check out this very, very interesting sort of gritty. It gives me those Resident Evil vibes without full-on zombies, and I absolutely love it. But not like the games, not the movie set. I love that are not good. I know they're not good, but I like them. Another one I want to put on there, Mandy. Nicolas Cage's Mandy is a completely nuts, balls to the wall, strange. Nicolas Cage has to go into a world of pink and orange and save his wife from cultists, but the cultists have a bunch of spiky bodyguards who ride motorcycles and fight with chainsaws. And when he, finds them, he cuts off their heads, set them on fire, and stares at a gecko while doing drugs. It's the strangest, most awesome thing you will ever see in your lifetime. And then they did the follow-up. The producers did that with Color Out of Space, the absolutely fantastic oddball film based upon a Lovecraft property. I don't know how faithful it is because I haven't read the book, but that's phenomenal. Another honorable mention, I want to put Tarantino's Django Unchained on here. Jamie Foxx, Leonardo Dicaprio. I've never been a big DiCaprio fan, but I absolutely love Django Unchained. It's honestly probably my second favorite Tarantino movie because I'm a big fan, and y'all will know this, of The Hateful Eight. Oh, there we go. Of The Hateful Eight. I just think it's a wonderful, awesome revenge thriller with some great music, and it is a delightful movie, Django Unchained. It's delightful, what can I say? Another one I want to drop out there, before we vanish, is a strange, it's from the people who did The Cure. It's a Japanese alien invasion sci-fi horror thriller romance. We open with a goldfish sopping in a child's blood, and then they're making jokes and stealing personalities, and there's a fight, and it's oddball and it's weird, and I absolutely love this movie. Another one I want to throw out there, and my favorite of last year, Jojo Rabbit. I've already talked about this movie, but Taika Waititi, possibly my favorite director. I do love Rodriguez, but Taika Waititi has just been hitting, and there's another one on his list that will show up here, but Jojo Rabbit is my honorable mention because I can't just make this a Taika Waititi list. wish I could. Logan. Logan's phenomenal. One of the best superhero movies. Possibly, I think I'm going to say the best X-Men movie, X-23. Hugh Jackman's swan song. Patrick Stewart's swan song. Wonderful, wonderful. I think it's got the best trailer in a long time. Absolutely incredible. Scott Pilgrim versus the World by Edgar Wright is wonderful. I love that movie. It's fun. It's quirky. It's a video game. Unfortunately, the video game is no longer available unless you download it in Xbox Live Arcade. But my 360 is not equipped with that. It's equipped with Star Wars Battlefront 2, the original, not the most recent one. And another Edgar Wright one, Baby Driver. Absolutely phenomenal movie. Phenomenal soundtrack. It is awesome. If you have not seen Baby Driver, seriously go see it. I know Kevin Spacey's in it, but just the movie is great regardless of him. Highly recommend that. Easy A, Emma Stone's Easy A, that came out, I think, 2010, 2011. That one is one of my favorite sort of rom-coms. It's based upon The Scarlet Letter or something, but Emma Stone is really, really good in that, and it's very fun and quirky, and it's just a delight to watch, similar to Adventureland. That came out, I think, 2007 or something. And my last, I got two more honorable mentions here. I have a few. There were quite a bit. Machete. Robert Rodriguez's Machete. He did not quite make the list, but I do like Danny Trejo playing Machete. Machete doesn't tweet. He kills people. Robert De Niro is trying to build a wall, and he shoots immigrants, and he's setting himself up for assassination. It's over the top. It's nuts. Machete kills is again balls to the wall. Mel Gibson is bad guy with a laser machete. It's completely nuts. I absolutely love it. Michelle Rodriguez is phenomenal in these movies. And my last honorable mention is Silver Lining Playbooks, because I do like a good rom-com, and Bradley Cooper and Jennifer Lawrence knocked this one out of the park. De Niro, again, being amazing in the 2010s. He did pretty good in The Irishman. Whether you like the movie or not, his performance is very, very wonderful. I personally enjoy The Irishman. It is long. I will say that. So,
Number 10 is my favorite Quentin Tarantino Western, Django Unchained. And this was a real tough, it was a real tough toss-up between this and Hateful Eight, because even though I truly respect the fact that Tarantino took his time to slowly build up the tension, the claustrophobia, and the murder mystery within this one cabin, and it does feature, in my opinion, Samuel L. Jackson's best performance, there are scenes in the beginning and the middle that do drag upon rewatch, and that's really the only reason I went with Django, because there is absolutely never a dull moment, and I can safely say that having actually seen it in theaters when it reopened. In fact, there were certain scenes that I enjoyed more in the theater than I ever have before, and I've seen it quite a few times, so that really does say a lot. No character in this movie ever goes to waste. Even smaller performances like Don Johnson as Big Daddy and his incredibly stupid gang of KKK goons, that bit with the bags still makes me laugh my ass off to this day. Characters like those still feel essential to the story and the atmosphere, especially with portraying the brutality of slavery, while also being entertaining and memorable, just as entertaining and memorable as our four main leads, which says a lot because Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Samuel L. Jackson give some of their best performances in their entire careers. DiCaprio and Jackson especially have to take a huge risk in playing such despicable characters who, when you make one small mistake in terms of characterization or performance, it could really come across as bad taste. But the two of them really rise to the occasion. They are the perfect love-to-hate villains. Whenever the slightest thing happens to them in a negative way, you feel extremely proud. And Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz have such genuine chemistry that there's actually a Terry Gilliam interview where he describes the movie as a great love story, but it's about the wrong love story, which, yeah, that is kind of the one glaring problem. As important as it is to rescue Hildy from Candy, Hildy herself isn't really that interesting of a character. Kerry Washington doesn't really get that many moments to shine, and if the rest of the movie wasn't great, then yeah, the movie would have faltered for that exact reason. But the good news is, everything else about the movie really is that great. The cinematography has this gritty but still stylish and bright old-fashioned Western vibe. The violent action sequences are exhilarating to watch. Whenever a racist is blown to pieces, the blood just splatters all over the place. It's bright neon red. It looks beautiful to watch the despicable die. And the soundtrack, one of Tarantino's best soundtracks, one of his best movies, period.
let's jump into my number 10. My number 10 movie of the whole era is one of my favorite franchises, my favorite children's properties. I want to talk about 2011's The Muppets. It is a reboot of The Muppets by Jason Segel, starring Amy Adams, and we get the new Muppet, Walter, who is adorable and has his own whistling tune. Now, this movie, I love. I love this movie from beginning to end, and before this movie even came out, I went and bought the soundtrack, back when I went and bought CDs. And this was during my right after high school, and I was going into college and such around there. So I'd take the bus, and I'd hop back, and boom, there I was. I'd get the soundtrack. So I went and bought the soundtrack at it was HMV, which is no more, unfortunately. Bought the CD, put it on, and from the beginning, this is musically, let's just talk musically about the Muppets. It's amazing. Life's a happy song when there's someone by your side to sing along. It's quirky, it's funny, it has this wonderful dance choreography with everyone in the village singing along, and Walter and Jason Segel's character, which escapes my brain right now, but it's Jason Segel, I'm just going to call him, skip along, and they go along, and then they reminisce about watching the early Muppet Show. And he says, you know what, we're going to go to Muppet Studios. And they eventually travel to Muppet Studios, they get there, it's the tour guide, and he says, well, this is where it was, this is what it's doing. I believe it's Alan Arkin's cameo in this. And they find Kermit, and he's all alone. And they have to find Kermit because an evil oil baron is trying to tear down the studio and drill for oil. Now, the plot is not necessarily the main thing on this, but this movie is pure magic from beginning to end. And in all true Muppet fashion, to save the theater, they have to put on a show. And that means they're going to do Mana Mana. And they're going to do Rainbow Connection. And they're going to have guest stars. And they're going to do a musical montage to We Built This Freaking City by Starship. Not Jefferson Starship or Jefferson Airplane, but Starship going around doing their thing. We built this city on rock and roll. And they're doing the thing, and it's freaking sweet. And they're doing all of this to save the theater. And then they sing Rainbow Connection, and it breaks my little heart. Walter gets his whistle solo, and then they save the theater. And Uncle Dudley, who first appeared on the episode of The Muppet Show where Vincent Price came in there, turns good. And he says, no, I am a Muppet too. And meanwhile, while all this magic is happening, and it's just like The Muppet Show, and I want it to be, and we have these emotional songs in the middle. Am I a man or am I a Muppet? Which is perfect, and I'm not a huge Jim Parsons fan, but he is brilliant as a live-action Walter. I love this. Freaking love this. I'm waving my hands. I love The Muppets. My favorite movie is The Muppet Movie. Second favorite is Great Muppet Caper because it was... No, this is possibly my third favorite Muppet movie overall because it has the Muppet spirit, it has the heart, and the most heartbreaking song that today, there are 3 things I cannot do without crying. 1, watch the Community episode where Troy leaves and they play Come Sail Away because it's tragic and I want Troy and Abed to be together forever because they're best friends. That's just how it should be. 2, pictures in my head. That, I was bawling in the theater. Pictures in my head where Kermit's walking through and he's looking at his broken relationships. Oh my freaking goodness. This is amazing. This is a freaking amazing movie. It's funny, it's heartfelt, it's just honestly the best Muppet movie since The Great Muppet Caper. It's the spirit Jim Henson would, and I wish they hadn't made a sequel and just stopped. Or had Jason Segel make that sequel. My favorite moment is when they travel by map and they just drive up out of the water. It's freaking sweet. Number 10 is The Muppets.
At number 9, we have Blade Runner 2049. Now, admittedly, this isn't one that I rewatch on a regular basis just because I don't always have 3 hours within a day to revisit it, so there are going to be some scenes and some character moments that I'm not going to remember the next time I see it, but the amount of appreciation and respect that I have for Denis Villeneuve and what he accomplished with this, that has never gone away. I think this is one of the rare sequels that actually expands upon the original, because the original, it's fine, like the actors are fine, the direction is fine, but not really much about it stood out for me. Everything in Blade Runner 2049 sticks out like a sore thumb, but in the best possible way. Denis Villeneuve's direction is absolutely incredible, and the fact that Roger Deakins is filming this incredibly expansive world building on such a massive scale with such a beautiful color palette that usually picks colors like blue, orange or purple that makes each scene look absolutely gorgeous, almost like candy. The fact that this is filmed on such a massive scope with so many practical elements, the set and costume design was Oscar worthy. The fact that so much of this was actually done for real, those sex symbol statues in Las Vegas that are shrouded in orange, that was 100% real. Ryan Gosling was interacting with all of that stuff, and it really adds to the believability and the realism of the atmosphere. As few action scenes as there are, when they're in the movie, they're extremely entertaining to watch because you have these artificial humans doing so many outlandish things like superhuman strength and speed, but it still feels grounded in realism, but still in an entertaining way. Ryan Gosling, Ana de Armas, Harrison Ford, and Sylvia Hux, and Dave Bautista too in the few minutes that he has, all give really top-notch performances, and I just love the fact that this is a murder mystery playing out in a sci-fi tech-noir setting that actually does make it feel unpredictable, and it ties into the original movie without ever even having to see it. There's not much else I can say other than Blade Runner 2049 is one of the best sci-fi movies we've ever gotten.
In at number 9, another movie I'm very passionate about, one of my personal heroes. I have 3 personal heroes: Robin Williams, Larry Norman, classic Christian rock artist, and Rich Mullins. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Rich Mullins, he wrote Awesome God, but his music is very inspirational to me, and it's just always been something that's been consistently in my life. So in 2014, David Leo Schultz came out with Ragamuffin, a biopic about Rich Mullins starring Michael Koch, who is a Canadian actor who I've seen in a couple other films as well. And it's basically the life and times of Rich Mullins, from growing up to playing this music to breaking down these barriers, because he doesn't want to be a Christian pop star. He wants to be someone who tells it like it is, and that's exactly what he does in this. We see a portrayal of Amy Grant that's very, very good, who did Baby Baby or Sing Your Praise for the Lord and such. And this movie is heart-wrenching. It explores a lot of themes that, whether you're religious or not, you can understand. As a kid, he's never the upright kid. He's the musical kid. Even in the movie, his dad said, I got 2 sons, a daughter, and a piano player. And he's constantly messing up whenever his dad's asking him to fix the tractor, putting gasoline in instead. And his dad is tough. And his dad is constantly there, is this grumpy mood, and no matter what he does, he cannot get his father's attention. And it's heartbreaking. And this storyline is one of the through sections that the music he does is heartbreaking. And I think it's best, his best music is played is he plays First Family, which is a song he writes for his mom and dad. And this is right before his dad passes away. I think it's supposed to be set like a month or 2 before the last time he sees his dad. And he's writing this, he's hanging out with his friends, he's got a little bit of success. His friends found that his song was on the radio, and the lyrics are, my family was always first to arrive, seven children crammed into a car that seated 5, 1 bathroom to bathe and shave, and hot water for 3. And then he's talking about how they're doing just fine, and he does this. He's basically just telling his family, my dad could make things grow out of Indiana clay, which is a very dense dirt, and it's beautiful and wonderful. And this through line is incredible. We get to see the strain it takes on his relationship and where he needs to be. He's in love with this girl, but this girl doesn't want to go on the road. She doesn't want to be involved, and it's heartbreaking. There's a scene where he has to smash in a phone booth because the girl got married and didn't tell him, and she says stop calling, and he just wanted her to be a part of his life. And it's like, wow, that's some real emotion right there, knowing it's career or family basically at the end of the day. And then we have his struggle with the record label because he wants to do different music, and they're like, it's too dark, it's too moody, it's too this, and they're like, no, write a hit. And just the way he approaches it, it's a very dark portrayal of music in general, because he's writing from his heart, and your heart's never going to say the happiest thought. It's not going to sing Pharrell Williams happy. It's going to tell you what you're really feeling, and that's what he's writing in his music. And then it portrays his later life, where he starts going to the reserves and playing music and helping out kids, and there's some really heartbreaking stories there. And then it also goes with Brennan Manning, and it's got, I think, one of the best sermons that you'll ever hear in your entire life. What is the phrasing there? And I know people are like, he's a universalist, whatever. In this movie, he's great. Sure, whatever. I don't know what a universalist is, but I'm glad for them. Um, um, God doesn't love you for who you are, but as you are. And he's asking Yahweh, etc. Yada yada. But it's just a beautiful movie from start to finish, and it's heartbreaking, and the ending will make you cry. And my wife looked at me and said, "We're never watching this again."
At number 8, we have Logan. Hugh Jackman's final performance as Wolverine after 17 years ended up being my favorite performance of his throughout his entire career. And the movie also introduced us to Daphne Keane, a child actress who could go an hour and a half without speaking and still bring a fully fleshed out character to life. And the fact that she is that good on his Dark Materials really goes to show that she's an actress just on par with, and in some cases better than some of the adult actors working today. Even Patrick Stewart, in his last performance after 17 years as the character, still brings a lot of new elements to the Professor by showing a much more vulnerable side to him that we've never seen before. And that's the great thing about the characterization. Every character, Logan, Laura, the Professor, they all have a vulnerable side that they try desperately to hide. But it doesn't really change the fact that deep down, they know for a fact that they need each other as a family, not just to survive, but just to enjoy the smallest things in life. I really love the direction that James Mangold uses throughout this movie. He directs it more as if it were a road movie where there were action scenes set upon deserts, abandoned buildings, countrysides, fields that were very much more reminiscent of a Western movie given the buildup and the amount of gritty violence, because the action scenes really do earn the hard R rating. They're extremely bloody. They still have very elaborate choreography. Daphne Keane and her stunt double, who actually was her age, show that they can do action choreography very seamlessly, and again, just as up to par with the adults. It was such a game-changing R-rated comic book movie for me personally, and as we know with one of the other features on my list, we know that R-rated comic book movies are starting to get more appreciated and more respected.
Coming in at number 8, I wanted to mention this one. This one is one that I did not think would make my list, but I'm thinking of movies that I watch the most. And one of the ones I've watched the most is Will Ferrell's, Tina Fey's, Jonah Hill's, and Brad Pitt's Megamind. Megamind is a 2010 animated film, just scraping the bottom of 2010s, about a villain and his evil fish minion who constantly try to fight and take down Metropolis Man or whatever, the guy in the white suit. And they're there doing their thing, and one day he finally kills him. Metro Man, that's the name. And he finally kills him. He doesn't know what to do. He takes over the city, and all the time there's this constant news coverage, and he's like, well, now what? I've got to create a new hero. And it's a very interesting take on sort of the hero genre, because what happens when the villain wins and you don't have anyone to fight? They sort of complete me like Batman and the Joker. That's just how they go together. And this movie, once again, has gorgeous animation, has a fun soundtrack. It's got George Hawthorne's Bad to the Bone, which is a delightful track regardless. The rest of his discography has never done a lot for me, but I do like Bad to the Bone. And we get wonderful, wonderful action sequences, and it's delightful. And I know Ben will be like, this is a great movie, and I absolutely agree. I think it's one of Will Ferrell's finest performances. This is the most quotable movie on my list, 100%. How many times have I quoted "The Spieta" or "Is this for my child?" and it's a tiny shrunken suit and such. And then it also has an interesting romance. Tina Fey plays a reporter who always interviews Metro Man, and after he dies, she's covering different stories, and this is where we end up with her falling in love with Mega Man as he can morph into this character, which he just happens to. And it's delightfully funny and warm, and it's honestly just a really delightful movie. It plays on the cliches and plays on the tropes that you would expect from a superhero, making fun of them while improving them. Because Mega Man is like, and now for the big fight. And he's literally breaking the fourth wall, not to the audience, but to himself, saying, this is what a superhero movie should be, and this is what I want my movie to be. If Megamind was a real person, this could be a biopic. And it's really, really fun from beginning to end. And whether you're watching this in 2010 or you're watching this in 2020, I've seen this movie probably about a dozen times. And every time I watch it, it always makes me laugh. It's very funny. It's very well written. It's incredibly directed by Tom McGrath. And it is so well casted for the voice. It is a delightful animated movie. It's the only one that made my list. I enjoyed all sorts of animated movies. Again, I'm not a huge animated guy, but Megamind is a delight. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor and check it out. It's super fun. It was like coming out on the hype of all the superhero flicks. So it has that edge that it's there before we got inundated with Marvel and DC. Right after like your Iron Mans and you got your Captain America, Winter Soldier and stuff around this time. Absolutely phenomenal animated film. And this is DreamWorks. They did Shrek, which I adore. I mean, but I don't know anyone who doesn't like Shrek, so maybe there's one person out there. That's okay. It's just my childhood. What can I say? I won't sing All Star. I'll spare you that.
At number 7, we have La La Land. This might have actually been the first movie I reviewed to give a 5 out of 5 in the exact year that it came out, as opposed to some other throwbacks I did that were from the 80s or 90s, where giving it a perfect score didn't really have that much of an impact. And upon rewatching La La Land, there is about 10 to 15 minutes of relationship drama that would have been cliched regardless of the eventual outcome without spoiling anything, but I wouldn't even really say that's enough to downgrade the movie for me. Damien Chazelle absolutely proves that the new Hollywood and golden age style of filmmaking can still please critics and casual audiences alike. You just have to put the amount of effort and passion into this project to create something magical and memorable, and that's exactly what every cast and crew member of this movie did. Damien Chazelle's very swift and meticulous direction of these incredible long-take musical numbers filled with incredibly catchy and witty songs that are brought to life by Ryan Gosling, Emma Stone, and the rest of the cast. There was so much style, there was so much spectacle and decadence that wouldn't really amount to much, admittedly, if the story and the characters weren't all that interesting. But thankfully, Chazelle's script was incredibly well thought out, and Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone bring these two characters to life in such a genuine, passionate way, where they convey very conflicting emotions about what it means to really follow your dreams at the expense of alienating yourself from other people that are important to you in their personal lives, especially when they're also trying to get ahead in the exact same entertainment business. It was passionate, it was inspirational, but also in a very bittersweet way. And that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love and respect the hell out of La La Land. I could watch it, listen to it, sing along with it at any given point.
Coming in at my number 7 is one movie I have watched over and over again, and I'm incredibly disappointed with the sequel. I don't mind it, but again, it's not great. I think that Denzel Washington is incredible in action roles. He is wonderful as an Unstoppable with the Train, and my favorite Denzel Washington by far is The Equalizer. This is an Anton Fuqua film, who is a very well-known director. I really enjoyed his Magnificent Seven. I just don't think it was as good as it could have been. I'm a big fan of the original Magnificent Seven because, well, you got Yul Brynner, and you can't beat Yul Brynner there. Equalizer follows Denzel Washington's character, who is a man who's living a quiet life, working at a hardware store. He's dancing the dance thing. I don't know. I always forget. He says that's the... And he used to be a hitman who got out after his wife was killed. And so he's there. He's doing his thing. He works every day. He lives a very simple life, and he's trying to read 100 books. And one night we're reading this book. The persistent girl who is a prostitute for these Russians comes in the cafe, and she's always having pie and coffee. And she one day walks over and says, "What are you reading?" And he's reading The Old Man and the Sea. And The Old Man and the Sea is doing what's right even if you gain nothing from it, basically in his words. And so he hangs out with her, he gets to know her, and after a few nights, he's like, "Hey, you should pursue your dreams. You want to be a singer. Hey, get a karaoke machine, save up," sort of thing. And one night she comes in all beat up. And he takes matters into his own hands, trying to track down the Russians. And we get one of the most phenomenal scenes in the whole movie's phenomenal. He walks in the office, he tracks him down because he gets the card one night after he's having a conversation with her. walks into the office and he puts the card down and says, "I'll give you what is it, $9,000?" And he's like, "Nah." He looks at his watch, 20 seconds. Beats the crap out of these guys with like glasses. He's throwing one guy into another and the other guy's gun, and I don't know, some guy gets killed on a table leg, and it's bloody and it's violent and it's really, really neat and cool. 26 seconds. Takes his money, walks out. And this, of course, leads to bring in the Kevin Spacey lookalike, my name escapes me. I'm just gonna grab it here. Martin Casas, who plays Teddy, and they bring him in to investigate this, and it eventually leads him to Denzel Washington. But before that, we get some really, really interesting, I would say, Dirty Harry side sequences as he stops a jewel robbery, tracks a guy down, and kills him with a hammer, and tracks down a girl's wedding ring. And he just starts doing sort of vigilante things to help people out because that's what he's trained for. That's what he does. And then they track him down, and the employees of the store gets taken prisoner and such, and he has to fight them all. And it's got some really cool, very unique kills with barbed wire and a power drill to the head, and I know they did a power drill to the head in Sleepaway Camp because you've obviously seen that. But this movie, from beginning to end, is great. It's a very happy feeling action movie. Chloe Grace Moretz is wonderful as Terry in this, and there's wonderful supporting performances from everyone in this cast. It's a very atmospheric, very slowed down story. Now the sequel I can't say the same much for. It feels like the sequel's okay. It's not bad. It's just, but I adore this film. Equalizer. In the end, Antoine Fuqua is an amazing director, and I do think I have the unpopular opinion here that Chloe Grace Moretz is a very talented actress. She's just choosing projects that don't get her Oscar attention. I do think in 20 years we see her sort of become that Meryl Streep character that sort of, when she gets to 40, becomes a sort of big megastar that everyone wants to see, sort of with your Out of Africa type of pictures. And boom, Meryl Streep is in these big Sophie Choices, Out of Africa, all these sort of big films, St. August County, etc. That does sort of suit her because she's very, very talented. I just think she's got off to oddball roles. She's got Cloud in the Skies, which I know Tyler was not a fan of, and like she did If I Stay, and Fifth Wave, which I saw in theater opening night, which was a mistake, and then she did Kick-Ass there, which again, I do think she deserves to do some more Oscar-worthy dramas, and I'd love to see her in that, but she's phenomenal in this. Denzel Washington is amazing, and I like its self-contained, a very simple, stripped-down story, and the way it portrays its violence. It's very appropriate and justifying of it.
At number 6, we have Joker. Something that I never thought I was going to say, because like most people, when I heard that they were making a standalone Joker movie in the vein of an origin story, kind of like Taxi Driver, where it was a psychological thriller, I still thought that was a stupid idea, because why would you make an origin story about a character who is so iconic for not really having an origin story? And the fact that it was going to be directed by Todd Phillips, who tried making a Scorsese-esque crime drama with War Dogs, and it did not work whatsoever. But thankfully, Joker works in spades, because Phillips' direction, even though it does have some Scorsese parallels, he still stands on his own as a filmmaker, and he brings so many storytelling techniques that most modern directors either wouldn't or couldn't be able to do, especially craft a story that presents a possible origin, a possible motivation for Joker living a life of crime, without ever confirming if the events going on in this movie are actually real, without even confirming if he himself is actually the Joker. Every scene in this movie is told from Arthur Fleck's perspective, and when he realizes that certain events that played out in his head we saw as an audience and thought we were real turns out weren't, it makes it a lot more unpredictable, and it also makes you question whether or not the other people who are either loving and respecting him or treating him like shit are actually doing either of those things, or if it's actually in reverse. So there's a lot of unpredictability that lends itself to, in my opinion, Joaquin Phoenix's best performance. I thought he was great in You Were Never Really Here, but he absolutely rises above that, and he makes you really wish that you could actually like this character, because yeah, people do treat him like shit. At one point, he was an innocent person. But at the end of the day, he chose to start killing people out of revenge. He doesn't kill people because he thinks the world will be a better place. He kills people because they hurt him and he's getting revenge. Plain and simple, regardless of what conspiracy theorists will tell you on the internet. Todd Phillips' direction, as I said before, was absolutely stunning. The cinematography captures beauty in some of the gloomiest shots in the entire film. The musical score that's based mostly on strings is incredibly intense and haunting, and even though the side actors don't get a lot of characterization because they're an enigma, they're a mystery, they know exactly what they have to do, and they lend to the unpredictability of the atmosphere in the best possible way.
Coming in at number 6, just under the Equalizer. I don't know why I'm doing this crazy voice. I don't know. I'm just doing strange voices. Coming in at number 6 for me is Taika Waititi, my favorite director's Hunt for the Wilder People. This is directed and written by Taika Waititi, starring Sam Neill and the kid from Deadpool, Julian Deson. And Sam Neill and his wife basically foster a kid, and they adopt him. And you see this kid who's been in so many foster homes in this weird place where they're singing happy, happy birthday on this tiny accordion. And it's this bizarre little world. And Sam Neill is this very distant father to him, and the mother is very loving. And one day, the mother passes away. And so the kid, fearing going back into foster care, runs into the wilds of New Zealand. And so Sam Neill goes after him, in the process breaking his leg and making them stay out in the New Zealand wilds. So they're going around and they're doing this, and they're bonding, and they're getting to know each other better. And this kid is funny and quirky, and he's like, I didn't choose the thug life chose me. And it's very memorable and very fun. But while they're wandering around the wilderness just trying to get back to civilization, because they don't exactly know where they are, the child services, the most intense child services in the history of child services, is out to do that. No child left behind. Oh, there's one conversation where she catches up with the kid and they're just roaming around because he just wants to stay with his adoptive father, even though you have to have a mother and a father, I guess, to stay in your foster or adoptive home. And he's like, well, I'm like the Terminator. He's like, well, I'm like Terminator 2 and you're Sarah Connor in the first one. It's just ridiculous, like over-the-top nerd conversation. And they eventually get to this cabin. And because they're trying to, and they go in, and everyone knows it's them as the missing kid. They're like, oh, you're that kid from the news and everything. And he's reading some of the books, and these hunters come in. And they have this conversation that is funny. And it works because Taika Waititi's comedic style is all about misunderstanding. The misunderstanding here is that the child is molested by Sam Neill, but they were just talking about the broken leg and how they survived, and the way they phrase it, they take it as wrong. But they are just describing their journey, and it's this hilarious scene that should not be funny, but the misunderstanding is the comedy, not what people believe it to be. And it's very, very funny. And then you get to the end. And again, I don't want to spoil this one heavily, but eventually the child services lady, there's a fly, sorry, has a tank. I love this movie. And there's just this father-son relationship between these two unlikely people that is delightful and wonderful and feels very, very real. And it's also one of the most hilarious movies I've ever seen in my whole damn life. I highly recommend Hunt for the Wilder People. This came out in 2016, and if you have not seen Taika Waititi's Eagle vs. Shark or Jojo Rabbit or any of these, do yourself a favor. Even What We Do in the Shadows is phenomenal. Watch a Taika Waititi movie. You will thank yourself. It's always a weird, oddball, dark comedy. You don't know what to expect, but you die laughing.
Number 5, we have a comedy. Josh, don't laugh. I said don't fucking laugh. You know what? You don't care. Number 5 is The Nice Guys. Boy, I have a lot of Ryan Gosling on this list. Eh, good for me. I knew I had to put a comedy on here somewhere, and I kept thinking, what was the best comedy of the decade? Most people would associate Bridesmaids, and yeah, Bridesmaids is funny as hell, but a few months ago, Nice Guys was on TV. My dad and I randomly decided to click on it and watch it, and I actually hadn't seen it since it came out in theaters back in 2016, and I loved it. It was one of the best movies of that year, but I hadn't had an urge to revisit it. But once we started watching it on TV, we were all laughing our asses off. We could not believe, even though the script was incredibly lowbrow, that we were constantly laughing at people who we didn't always think were that good of an actor. I'm not usually a Russell Crowe fan, and I didn't think pairing him with Ryan Gosling would lead to that good of chemistry. But you know what? I was absolutely wrong, and I love the role reversal between the two of them, as opposed to Gosling being smart but very cowardly and Crowe being dumb but brooding. It's actually the other way around. Russell Crowe is smart but brooding, and Gosling is dumb and cowardly. It's a reversal you don't really see that often in modern day buddy cop movies. I love that Shane Black's script is incredibly witty, it's very subversive, it challenges a lot of different buddy cop cliches. There's no splitting up only to reunite at the last minute, because Black knows for a fact that we know as an audience that they're going to show up, they're going to kick ass and save the day, so he doesn't waste any time on that. And thank God for it. He spends a lot more time, in my opinion, creating the best slapstick comedy since Home Alone. All of those video essays where Edgar Wright and Jackie Chan are shown to put an action and reaction of a slapstick gag in the exact same shot. That's exactly what Shane Black does here. There is a scene where Ryan Gosling has to toss a gun to Russell Crowe in the middle of a shootout. And in one shot, we get Gosling throwing the gun through a window, breaking the glass, Crowe looking scared and pissed at Gosling at the exact same time. And that just shows the level of commitment that they went into creating such memorable and intelligent physical comedy. And it really goes to show how these guys, despite the fact that they're not really known for it, are actually really good at it. People said that Knives Out was the reinvention of the murder mystery. Can we bring back the slapstick or the screwball comedy, please? Because Shane Black can do this. He doesn't have to make crappy Predator movies for the rest of his life.
Coming in at number 5 on my list is another movie from 2016. 2016 was a stacked year for me. That's, I think 3 of these movies. Is Sing Street, directed by John Carney. This follows a kid who goes to an English boarding school after moving and decides to start a band. It's a coming-of-age Irish new wave musical. It features a lot of the new wave music of the early 80s and a lot of original scores, some written by the guy from Moon 5, Adam Levine. And it is delightful, it's fun, it's quirky. It is a musical without being right in your face singing and dancing musical. It's, I would say, a rock musical, if I would define it. But this, we open up, the kid doesn't have any friends. His brother's there, played by, guy who played Jack, I think his name Jack, someone from Free Fire, who's phenomenal in this. And he's got these parents who are constantly fighting and eventually get divorced. And he doesn't live the happiest family life, but the one thing he always has and he genuinely loves is music. He always loves music, and his brother is giving him this rock and roll education. And one day he meets this girl that everyone's tried to talk to, and he's like, I'm in a band. And he does not have a band. So he has to come up with a band. So they get together, this ragtag group of people from his school, and form a band to impress the girl. And then they say, oh, we made a music video. Here we go. Come be in the music video. And it's delight. It is an absolute delight from beginning to end. And of course, he falls in love with the girl, and they play a bunch of songs, and they play the school dance, and then he rides off into the sunset, finding his true love. It's delightful. It's fun. It's super indie. The songs are a highlight, but the performances are even more. Again, wonderful singers they hired for this. And, you know, usually the British accents usually get to me, but with this Irish, I'm cool with the Irish accents. So, I like this movie so much. I played the Drive It Like You Stole It song at my wedding, and I was the only one on the dance floor with my wife. But fuck it, it's my wedding. I'm going to dance the songs I like with my wife, because it's catchy. This is your life. You can't go anywhere. You got to learn to rock and roll it. Anyway, Drive It Like You Stole It. Brown Shoes is a pretty cool song, and they do sort of the Duran Duran in styled Riddle of the Model, which is a very catchy song. And then Drive It Like You Stole It again is the big finale, but it also has these emotional ballads. Up and To Find You. Up is more uplifting in the ballad. 2 o'clock on the edge of morning, she's running magical circles in my head. Just beautifully lyrically written. And then To Find You. I was on my way to find you. He writes her this love song. He makes her cry. It's really beautiful. And oh my goodness, if you have not seen String Street, you are missing out. One of the best posters in a while. It's very delight. It is just an absolute delightful of a movie. Number 5, we are getting down to the nitty gritty. There's just so many damn good movies. My number 1 is going to be great. Tyler, what's your next number?
Number 4 is my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie ever. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yes, it features the least of his usual tropes. It follows his simplest story of a washed-up actor, an up-and-coming actress, and a disgraced stuntman. But this is a movie about the fact that we all have a limited amount of time to follow our dreams, and that we should never let a second of it ever go to waste. And Quentin Tarantino shoots the most mundane of daily life moments in such a cinematic and impactful way that it is really hard not to appreciate it no matter how long the movie is. At 2 hours and 40 minutes, I was riveted from start to finish every time I went to the theater to see it, which was 4 times in total, and another 2 times at home that, while it did lose me a little bit in certain scenes, just because there wasn't a big-ass screen for me to soak in all of this imagery, and because my TV doesn't like my Blu-ray player, it still never ceases to amaze me. Leonardo DiCaprio, in my opinion, gives my favorite performance of his as an actor who feels as if he's wasted his career and his best work is in the past. But when he has other actors and other fans tell him how much they love his past work that he feels very ashamed of, he does realize that there are a lot of people who will respect him and his legacy. He knows for a fact that there's always going to be fans of his. He just has to treat them with respect by treating the material that he's given with even more respect. Brad Pitt gives, again, my favorite performance of his as a stuntman who's not interested in fame or fortune because the attention just brings out the worst in him. He just wants to do the thing that he loves the most. And Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, is portrayed as a humble actress who just lives daily life. And you know why that's interesting? Because that's what she should be doing right now. She should not be remembered as a victim in an exploitation or a documentary movie. The production design, the set design, and the cinematography all go hand in hand in creating this mundane slice of life moment where just watching people driving around the streets of Hollywood, listening to old-fashioned radio, just feels riveting because these characters, as I said before, know they have a limited amount of time to do the thing that they love most. So they decide to appreciate life at its fullest by absorbing everything about life that is entertaining, the things that they wish that they could do with the time that they have left.
Coming in at number 4 on my list, I have the most unique movie that you will ever see in your entire life. It stars Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe. Swiss Army Man. Again, 2016 was a fantastic year for movies. As you can see, a lot of my list is made up of 2016 movies. I saw all the ones on my list in theaters, and this one I saw 3 times. I went to the theater to see Swiss Army Man with my buddy Dan and a couple other people, and nobody got it. I watched this movie, and I died of laughter. Dan walks out, and he's like, yeah, that sucked. You've never seen anything like Swiss Army Man. I went back and saw it again. Again, I saw it at the Princess, where I'm filming this right now, in the basement, where I'm doing my work. I'm just at my office taking a little break from all this madness, doing poster sale. Check that out on princesscinema.com. If you got a chance, we're auctioning off posters. There is a Kill Bill and a 10 and 10, all sorts of dope posters right now. Lots of good stuff coming up. We will have poster auction going for a while. But Swiss Army Man. Paul Dano gets shipwrecked and stranded on an island. And he finds a dead body, played by Daniel Radcliffe, of Harry Potter fame, horns, and the F word. Yes, I named things that you would not naturally think of. Or Guns Akimbo, which is one of the best movies of 2020. And he finds this body, and it starts to fart. And he realizes that if he uses the farting body, he can cross the lake like a jet ski. It is so fucking weird, man. You have never seen anything like this. It's completely bizarre and out to lunch, and I don't know if this movie even has a right to exist, but I love that it does. I love that someone, it was Daniel Kwan, who directed and wrote this along with Daniel Scheinert. They made this bizarre creation come to life, and he eventually becomes best friends with this body, which can literally do anything. It's this person he can talk to because Paul Dano's not very good with talking to girls, so he pretends Daniel Radcliffe is such so he can practice. When he builds a bus out of flowers and twigs, because I guess they have free time because he's stranded in the middle of nowhere. He uses them as a shower, which is really gross, but very creative and just so strange. So darn strange. Paul Dano did Love and Mercy. I think that was 2018, which is a good movie, but this performance is strictly Paul Dano being amazing at acting. And I've seen it before in a few other things, but this one, he disappears into this role as this lonely man who finds his dead body as his only friend. It feels like a mirage. It feels like a fantasy. And then we get to our ending where reality just strikes and you're like, oh crap. And then you get to the end and you're like, what did I just watch? And I love it. It's the most bizarre movie I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like this in my whole darn life. And I think this is the perfect choice of movie for Daniel Radcliffe to be doing because he's doing a lot of these smaller indie ones. And I absolutely love where he's going with his career because you get the indie cred, then you get the Oscar cred because you got to break that stigma of being a franchise star. But if you've not seen Swiss Army Man and you like movies that you cannot explain that are super weird that you will enjoy, this is for you. If you don't like weird shit, don't watch this. Straight up.
At number 3, I'm 100% serious about this. Mary Poppins Returns. And before you guys check out, or assuming you haven't checked out at some of the other mentions on this list, the reason I put this on here is because even though there are great Pixar movies for their originality, even though there are some old-fashioned Disney movies on Disney Plus that technically have more significance to them, and even though there are some brand new Disney animated classics like Princess and the Frog that are still reminding of how great the Disney Renaissance was, I have never felt nostalgic about the Disney VHSs I used to watch as a kid than watching Mary Poppins Returns, and I've seen it 4 times. Not a shred of magic has ever disappeared. If anything, it's gotten more magical over time. Emily Blunt does a great job at making the title character her own without ever living in the shadows of Julie Andrews. Lin-Manuel Miranda gives my favorite performance of his as just such a cheerful sidekick who's not interested in stepping on other people's glory. He just knows for a fact that if he helps other people, he'll be rewarded for it in the process. And when he helps Mary Poppins on this journey, he's rewarded for it by living such a grand experience that the kids are going through. The 3 kids that are in this movie are fantastic for child actors, which is incredibly important because they're the ones who are learning the most amount of lessons in this movie. The musical numbers feature incredible choreography. The Sherman Brothers inspired songs by Scott Whitman and Mark Shaman are absolutely top-notch. They're some of the best Disney songs I've heard in years. The entire animated bit, thank you to Rob Marshall for taking the time to convince Disney to spend another year working on this movie just to accomplish just what a technical and beautiful marvel this sequence was. I've seen it 4 times, and that animated bit throughout the entire thing, I am smiling. My jaw is on the floor. I cannot believe just how old-fashioned and yet modern it is, and just what a joy it is, and how much it makes you feel like you're a little kid again. I know technically on the surface level there isn't a lot to it, and it's a standard lesson of there are people in life who can help you overcome the toughest of obstacles as long as you let them. But in my opinion, that's the best message a Disney movie can provide. It reminded me so much of lessons from movies like Winnie the Pooh or Lion King or the original Jungle Book, especially when coming up with such a beautiful, fun, visually dazzling atmosphere that I haven't seen Disney do in an incredibly long time. I know I'm in the minority for liking this, but I don't like it. I fucking love it.
In at number 3 is the Sam Mendes 2012 directed Skyfall. This is the second James Bond movie I saw in theaters. The first one I saw was Casino Royale. I skipped Quantum of Solace because I was not able to make it as I was in high school, which I enjoyed if you watch it back to back with Casino Royale. And I have a little bit of tea here. All this talking has made my voice sore. Now, this is possibly... This is 100% one of the top 10 James Bond movies ever made. It definitely has one of the best James Bond themes. That's so much better. One of the best James Bond themes in Adele's Skyfall, which I'm a big fan of Adele. I know people don't really love Hello or Rolling Deeper Center My Love, but I'm a huge fan of her singing and her incredible vocal talent. And it was the perfect Shirley Bassey, um, big sort of operatic opening piece. But this movie from beginning to end is a thrill ride. It's wonderfully acted and cast. Daniel Craig is 100% on point as Bond here. He's giving his absolutely best performance as Bond. Casino Royale is incredible, but Skyfall is better. And this again dives into his history. We get the wonderful villain in Javier Bardem. We get some of the best action sequences that you will ever see in a James Bond movie. Opening with the Grand Bazaar sequence where they're driving around and he's got to recover the stolen database of agents before the names get leaked and all the agents die, and they're fighting on a train, they're driving cars, and we get Monty Penny in action, which is great, played by Naomi Harris, who is absolutely phenomenal in this movie for the small role she has. She gets a bigger role in the later films, and honestly, if Daniel Craig retired, make her James Bond. She's great. I don't see why she couldn't be James Bond. She can do action. I'm in. And then James Bond dies. We get this every time someone falls into water. I think of the Skyfall or the head sequence where like the porpoise is laughing, goodbye, goodbye. Monkey's Head is a delightful film that went up against the Oscars, along with one of their specials, because that's when they debuted a bunch of the material for that. But yeah, so we get that James Bond is dead and Judi Dench is M, which this is definitely her finest performance as M. I think she has a lot to do with this movie, and it's great. Again, The World Is Not Enough was a heavy Judi Dench character piece. They're just letting her act the hell out of a movie, which is amazing. Then we get to go around and do all these things. James Bond just is fine. He's living in some place, and he comes back. They sold his flat. And she's like, I thought you were dead. And he's like, and they're like, where have you been? Enjoying death. And so they recertify him, but he's not actually certified. We get, what's his name? Ralph Fiennes in there as the new head of basically certifying him and saying, well, that's too bad. And they put him back in action, and he has to go down and track down this person who was relatively known to him. I do believe it's his brother off the top of my head. They never quite give you the full details on that, but definitely connected. And he goes to this island to track him down. And just Javier Bardem's performance in this scene is incredible. He does this very villainous act, and he's taunting Bond as he's got him captured. And again, the trailer does the movie justice. There's a lot of movies that have bad trailers, and then the movies are good, or good trailers and bad movies. But the movie and the trailer match up for this one without spoiling too much. And I think one of the best lines of this whole movie is when Bond says, "What's your hobby?" Resurrection. Just awesome. Chills. Oh my goodness. Then they get these big fight sequences, and they have a big finale at his childhood house where he goes back to, and he Home Alone'ifies it. As cheesy as that sounded, it really works for the movie. And they all fight, and the saddest moment of this movie is when they blow up the Aston Martin. Not when they kill Judi Dench. I love this movie from beginning to end. It's wonderful. It's delightful. It's wonderfully photographed. The score is an absolute highlight. Who does the score again? Not David Arnold. It's anyway, the score is phenomenal. If you have not heard this score, it's great to write to listen to. It's just it stands on its own. The movie, the editing, the sound, everything is technically wonderful. This James Bond is at his best. Skyfall, absolutely phenomenal.
Number 2 won't surprise anybody, but it is A Quiet Place. And I've made a lot of videos on my own channel where I at least mention how much I love it, but you know what? I can't help it. As someone who finds mainstream horror and indie horror equally hit and miss for a variety of different reasons, I think this is the movie that actually bridges the gap between the two. Because for the first half hour, it is mainly a human drama that builds up the claustrophobia and yet agoraphobia of the situation at the exact same time. I love the fact that the use of sign language isn't just used to survive from the monsters in order to elevate the scares, but it's also used as a metaphor just for the lack of communication that this family is experiencing over the past traumas that they still haven't really gotten over. And judging by where they're going to go with the second one, I get the feeling that there are just new traumas that they have to overcome based on the ones that they've succeeded at with the very first one. I love the fact that John Krasinski, again, as I said with Damien Chazelle, proves that the new Hollywood style of filmmaking can still work, judging by the way that his direction feels very reminiscent of Steven Spielberg from Jaws, where he doesn't reveal the creatures at first. He builds up the tension with a lack of imagery and an abundance of sound design to build them up as an ominous presence and slowly reveal the creatures, which didn't like them the first time, but upon rewatches, I fucking love these creatures. I love how intimidating they are. I love that they're just creatures that are struggling to survive in their own merits, which goes to show how much the villains and the heroes really have in common. And the heroes are extremely lovable heroes. I feared for them every single second. That bathtub sequence with Emily Blunt, I can't watch it without closing my eyes. I honestly can't. Blunt, Millie Simmons, John Krasinski, and Noah Jupe all give fantastic performances, and I cannot wait to see them again in the sequel.
Coming in at my number 2, we are very close to getting to number 1, and I know, Tyler, you're very excited to know what my number 1 is. My number 2 movie of 10 years is The Raid Redemption. This is an Indonesian thriller piece, very die-hardish. It stars the incomparable Iko Uwanis. I hope I got your name right there. And it has the best fight choreography that you will see in any movie in such a long time. It's better than a Jackie Chan action. It's definitely up there with like some hard-boiled Cho Yun-fat type stuff. And it is phenomenal. It stars a SWAT team going into a building to take down the bad guy at the top. And they have to fight floor by floor by floor by floor by floor by floor by floor to get to the bad guy at the top. And meanwhile, everyone in the building is trying to kill them. And that's why I say it's very similar to Die Hard, because you got to run around a building and everyone's trying to kill them. But it is the best imitation of Die Hard that you will ever see. A lot of people are like, it's Die Hard on a plane, it's Die Hard this. This is strictly a dope action movie. So from the beginning, I believe the tagline is 99 minutes of action, 2 minutes of romance. And that's straight up what it is. It is a solid action piece from beginning to end. The best action, I think this is the best action movie of the last 20 years. Maybe the last 30 even. I would put this above Terminator 2, which is absolutely phenomenal, technical groundbreaking, but just the action in this, the way they kick and they punch and the fights. And I'm going to insert a clip right here. And I'm going to insert another clip right here. And another clip right here. And another clip right here. And again, the action is phenomenal. My favorite fight sequence in the whole thing is where he's fighting this guy and he bashes his head against the door, against the bottom, pulls up the floorboard and nails him right in the neck after bashing through those lights. It's freaking sweet. And then you got the final fight and you got the meat hooks and there's just the insane guy with the long hair going nuts. Oh my goodness. This is a movie. I watched this in college. Thomas, hello, if you're watching. Thank you for showing me this movie. We were at Conestoga College and there was the Den. And so we went up to the Den and they had Netflix and this was on it. So Thomas put on The Raid Redemption and I'm like, holy crap, this is awesome. And then I went and bought the Blu-ray. Then I showed Kevin and I showed everyone. It's just one of those movies that I'm just like, this is an amazing movie from beginning to end. I cannot tell you how much I love The Raid. And it's one of those things where I can't visually describe the action sequences, but they are all incredible. The sound design is also very good. You don't get repetitive punching and kicking noises. It's, again, expertly choreographed. And one of the really, really nice things is there's no shaky cam. It's super wide. It's very easy to see. But it's just like, the first time I saw this, I honestly was like, wow, someone made that? Seriously, you can make that? Action can be that cool? And that, for me, is The Raid Redemption. If you have not seen this movie, please watch The Raid Redemption. You don't, even if you don't like horror movies, watch The Raid Redemption. There's very little talking. It's mostly people punching and kicking each other, and it's freaking sweet. This is the best action movie of the last 20 years. 100%. I would say only the one that there's nothing that really even comes close to it. Action wise, not even like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon or Forbidden Fortress or Forbidden Kingdom is going to rank it up with there for me, because this is just so darn good. Watch the Raid freaking Redemption and watch the second one. That's an amazing movie. It's more of a drama with action sets, but it's just so darn good. Watch these guys. And if you don't know who they are, they were in Star Wars with the weird Force Awakens when Han Solo fought the weird gurgly monsters on the spaceship. I don't know. The Raid Redemption is phenomenal. Watch the Raid Redemption. I'm telling you.
And at number 1, this again won't surprise anybody judging by how many times I've also mentioned this movie in other videos, but I truly stand by it every second. It is When Marnie Was There, which is easily my favorite Studio Ghibli film ever. Because this was the movie where I knew I loved it, but I didn't know why. And upon months after having seen it at the theater, I didn't go online, I didn't look it up on YouTube. I decided to try and analyze it by myself, tried to discover, going scene by scene, what it was that I loved about it, what were some of the things that I missed. And you know what? I continued to love it and love it and love it. I could not believe how much I managed to dissect out of this movie. A movie about how friendships come in a variety of different forms and can help you overcome past trauma so long as you let people help you, and more importantly, you take the time to help them in return. Haley Steinfeld and Kiki Shipka are absolutely terrific as Anna and Marnie. Anna, in my opinion, is one of the most relatable characters I've ever seen in a film or TV show, and Marnie herself reminds me of a lot of friends that I've had who really want to learn about you, want you to express yourself, and yet they're incredibly shy and timid about expressing their own insecurities, which just felt a lot more believable. I love the look of this movie. It has some of the most beautiful, lush animation I've ever seen. The color blue stands out in particular as an obvious symbol and metaphor for grieving, not just the fact that they are surrounded by this beautiful blue ocean, lots of bright blue skies, but blue on the color of their clothing, blue in the color of their eyes. That really goes to show how much their grief has consumed them to the point where they really do need each other. And you especially feel that they need each other because, without spoiling anything, they only meet up with each other 3 times over the course of this film. It's another movie with a lesson about how it's important to spend time with those you love the most with what very little time that you have, without ever holding a grudge against anyone, including yourself, for feeling as if you have wasted that opportunity. There's not much else I can say other than I fucking love When Marnie Was There. It's my favorite coming-of-age movie. It's my favorite animated film. It might be my favorite movie ever.
Coming in at my number 1 is Shane Black's The Nice Guys. This is honestly the most delightful surprise to me that I have seen in such a long time. I like old school buddy cop movies. I love Lethal Weapon 1 and 2. 3 and 4 and Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry films are also phenomenal. They're all buddy cop. But this is a 70s buddy cop written and directed by Shane Black, starring Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. And it's honestly hilarious from beginning to end. It's got some really good action, quippy dialogue, beautiful sets. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal movie. Not to mention the poster looks really cool. Russell Crowe is a guy who goes around and breaks people's arms for money. Anyone that'll pay him to do it, he'll go around and break your arm, collect your money. Ryan Gosling is a private detective who's just trying to make a living and support his daughter. And one day, Russell Crowe bursts in, breaks his arm, and leaves because he's investigating the disappearance of an actress. She bursts in. Oh, by the way, I'm going to break your arm. And he's like, no. And Ryan Gosling is, honestly, this is probably his best performance. I was maybe not his best, but Only God Forgives or Drive or something like that. One of those would be really, really up there too. But for me, this is so much fun. So they have to team up, and they have to figure out who's doing this. He gets hired to basically find this missing girl, and it leads into strange scenarios and situations and funniest dialogue. His daughter just looks at him. Yeah, my friend Maggie, would you beat her up for $10? No. it's dry, but then it's funny, but then it's over the top. They track down some leads and they find where the girl was in a burnt house, and they learn that she was working on some pornographic films. And then they track her to this giant party, and he's walking around doing things. The little girl's just sitting there hanging out with these people, watching their homemade movies kids shouldn't be watching. And Ryan Gosling questions mermaids, and it's then they all roll down a hill and find the dead body they were looking for. And I'm like, this is bonkers, but so much fun. And they eventually end up finding a large corporation, having a cool fight sequence, and riding horses, and it's just bananas. It's straight up bananas. I love this movie. It's number one of the decade for me. I've watched it many, many, many times. I love 1970s. I love the buddy cop genre, and I love how quippy and how well written this is. Shane Black can be a very, very good writer. He wrote the Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger really, really well. Very memorable, very quotable. This movie is incredibly written, well written, very quippy, very, very good on everything that it tries to achieve. It lands every joke. It lands every line of dialogue. It hits the emotional moments. This movie is a pitch perfect Shane Black movie, unlike The Predator or Predators or whatever that one he did was with the guy from Key and Peele, and Olivia Wilde or something. But this movie is phenomenal. Again, one of the things for me is score. The score is absolutely pitch perfect. That very 70s sort of hazy rock with the introduction and synthesizers like that mixed in throughout. Pitch perfect performances. I'm so upset this didn't get, honestly, best script. It should have won best screenplay at the Oscars. Not a single nomination. Apparently fun movies don't matter, only serious dramas. So, number one for me is The Nice Guys. Thanks for joining us on the Josh Cast, the Josh and Tyler Show. I always get the name wrong. Names are hard. Tyler, thanks for joining me, and we will be back doing another video in a few days. Again, we're doing this part because of COVID, obviously. So until then, I don't know. Tyler, say something awesome.
Guys, thank you as always for watching. Thank you to Josh for inviting me on this video yet again. I know I didn't mention any honorable mentions before, but I'm going to run by a few of them quickly just because this was a hard list to make. And there are some films that people are going to be like, well, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? I wanted to put Moonrise Kingdom, Grand Budapest Hotel, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Snowpiercer, and Captain America: The Winter Soldier on my list, but I just couldn't find room in them. But I highly recommend checking those movies out, assuming you haven't at that point. I mean, really, that's the other reason I didn't mention them at the beginning. But in any case, be sure to check out more videos of us on Josh's channel and on my channel as well. Be sure to stay tuned for more reviews. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.